Hi, you're listening to Oh Crap with Jamie. This is a podcast for parents working hard to break the cycles while dropping the F-bomb a lot. I'm your host, Jamie Glowacki, and I am the author of Oh Crap Potty Training and Oh Crap I Have a Toddler. And I am so happy you're here. Hey guys, welcome. All right, I'm kind of jumping out of my skin here because this is going to be a big one. This is going to be a big podcast. So I'm tying up some loose ends here. You know, when you go down a rabbit hole that kind of locks up a lot of loose thoughts that you had. So I'm pretty excited about this. All right, we're going to talk about temperament. We're going to talk about temperament versus personality. And there's a lot to cover here. And one of the loose ends that this is tying up for me is I have been shocked at the amount of parents that I meet with who right away ask me, I think, I suspect a diagnosis. I think my kid has this. I think my kid has that. I am looking all around me and people it's almost like they can't wait for a diagnosis. And diagnoses are great. Don't get me wrong. They're like an awesome roadmap for if your child has a neuro different brain, right? And the amount of comments on Instagram, I have a neurodivergent, I have neurospicy, I have neuro this, neuro that. And these are 2 or 3-year-olds. And I'm like, is it neurospicy or is it 3? Because they're kind of the same. And I'm not discouraging anybody from, getting evaluated. Only and I know mom's intuition is usually dead on, okay? But so many clients that I meet with, they're like, well, I'm going to get her tested for autism. I'm going to get her tested for ADHD. And we kind of go through and I'm like, you're more than welcome to get your child evaluated, but these are just temperament. Some kids are born with different temperaments. And I found myself having a hard time explaining it. And I know the temperaments from, as according to Steiner and Waldorf schooling. So I'll run through those, but I did sort of a little dive, a deep dive into temperament versus personality. And and you're going to love what I found. It's amazing. So I took a lot of notes. So I'm going to be kind of reading off some of my notes. But here's the thing. At the end, I'll give you mismatches, because if your child has a temperament that is wildly different than yours, you may think something's wrong with your child, and there may not be. And I want to, the diagnosis thing, I think I talked about this before. I've done so many podcasts, I forget. But again, by all means, get your child evaluated. If you suspect something is kind of off and it's disruptive to your life, then yes, I'm not trying to discourage. I don't think there's anything wrong with diagnoses. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting your child evaluated. If you have really attempted all the parenting strategies, you've really made, carved time, slowed down your lifestyle, made changes to, even diet can really affect kids' behavior and can exacerbate symptoms. So this is not at all to discourage that, but I am shocked by how often we leap to a diagnosis. So for example, we went on a hike, Pascal and I went on a hike in New Hampshire. We had a great time, awesome hike. And then we met some friends at a swimming hole. Now, if you've ever been to New Hampshire, like on the Kangamangas Highway, they're like almost like riverbeds with like big rocks and little rocks. And some create slides that you can almost natural water slides. And so we were at a swimming hole, and there was a bunch of rocks, and it wasn't like very deep water. And Pascal started to make like rock towers, like cairns, and he got very, very focused on it. And he was there, I don't know, for like an hour, and the rocks kept dropping, and he was just really focused, and I could see he was, in his head. And then that night we got back to the hotel, and he was like, I'm going to look up some rock tower videos. I want to know how they do this thing. Right. So he kind of watches YouTube on rock towers. And so, the next day at the watering hole, I jokingly said it to my friend. I said, oh, he was watching YouTube videos last night on the rock making rock towers. And she said, oh yeah, there's the ADHD, hyperfocused. And I was like, no, Pascal doesn't have ADHD. And she was like, well, he's super focused on this. Guys, we can be focused on things. I said, he's just focused on that. That's not ADHD. Hyper focus for a minute on something is focus. It's not necessarily a diagnosis. And I was really shocked. And she was like, well, we probably all have it. And I said, well, we probably are all in a distracting environment and right now with our phones and social media. And I don't know, it's so weird to me. It was so weird to me that she like wanted to give this like diagnosis to him. And I was like, he has never shown any other signs of ADHD. He's just really into doing this right now. Just like if a kid's building a Lego tower and obsessed with it, building a Lego structure, that's not necessarily ADHD. It could, it of course could be a factor, but and then I see this all over social media. Like there's this really popular meme right now with the guy who does the Tinder conversations. I have one daughter. I'm sure you've heard it if you're on social media. It's called the summer hit. I mean, People Magazine did an article on him, and what he does if you're not on social media is he takes people send him awkward Tinder conversations, and he puts it to music. And this one is called "I Have One Daughter," and the guy responds, "How many baby daddies do you have?" And she's like, ellipses. And he goes, she says, "I have one daughter." And he says, "Yeah, I understand. Is she by the same father?" Like it's a funny, and it's a funny conversation, but it's also the guy put it to like just the catchiest music in the world. And so a lot of people are using it for reels, and it is literally on everyone's mind. Everybody is, talking about having it stuck on a loop in their head. And so many people are saying, yeah, my ADHD brain grabbing onto this song, my ADHD brain. And I'm like, getting a song stuck in your head, like we have studies on how earworms are created. That's not ADHD, guys. It can be part of your ADHD, but because a person sings a song and it gets stuck in their head, especially a catchy melody, is that's scientifically founded that it happens to everybody, not just ADHD. So I just want us to not. I feel like when I you'll figure this out when I talk about the temperaments. I feel like we have so mistaken things that are innate temperaments in our kids as potentially something wrong. And a lot of times, again, it's because of parental mismatch. So first I wanted to let you know what the 4 temperaments are according to Waldorf, because I do think this is a pretty good explanation. And you don't have to like Waldorf or Steiner. There's some things about it I'm not crazy about, but I thought this was like a really cool a basic understanding of it, because they use the 4 elements as well. So there's sanguine, and that is air. And these are your kids who are like happy and carefree. They are the most social of all the temperaments. They like, beautiful things. They like bright colors. They tend to make friends very easily. They're bubbly. And that is sanguine. That's one temperament. There are 4. There's choleric, which is fire. And these are the kids who are full of energy and intensity. They have strong wills. They have quick tempers. They're like your YOLO kids. Very often I find they're second borns. They often lead the way. They pursue goals. They are forceful, energetic, quick-witted, vigorous. They're decisive. And then they're going to put their mind on something and they're going to go for it, right? Then you have a melancholic, which is earth. And these kids tend to be cautious. They take measured approaches. They are sensitive. They are deeply feeling. They have a lot of self-control, but they also have a lot of self-criticism. They observe others closely. They show empathy, even though toddlers don't really have empathy. They can suffer deeply with other people. They sympathize and empathize with others. They love outer peace and inner peace. Okay. And then phlegmatic is water. And so these kids are inwardly directed, right? They are like melancholic children, but they're dreamier and they're much more contented. They are very sentimental. They're cozy kids, right? They like to be cozy. They can spend a lot of time doing things that they enjoy. They have a lot of patience, endurance, calmness. They're kind of content, but they're very inward. Okay. And they might seem like introverts. do your kids fall into one of those categories? I feel like they do. They all like, I think these are just really good because every kid I work with, you know, parents will put them in one of these categories, which I think is great. Now, the point in Waldorf, Steiner advocated for balancing our temperaments, right? Because when you fall into one of these temperaments, that's great. But what I find is we are leaning into it. And why I love this so much is because one of the struggles I feel like everybody's having in creating a village, creating community is, and I've harped on this before, is falling back on this. I'm introverted. I'm shy. I can't do this. I don't like to talk to people. I don't like to do small talk, but we have to. We have to do this. And so I love the idea of knowing your temperament, but also trying to balance it with the other temperaments, right? And so if you are like, if I don't even, I think I've done a good job of balancing, but that's like from years of therapy. And because I'm older than most of you, I don't think I'm better than anybody. But I think I was born into the world probably phlegmatic or maybe even melancholic. I learned how to be sanguine. Sanguine. I can appear that way to a lot of people, like extroverted and bubbly, but at the heart of it, I like to be by myself. I also have that fire. So I think like over the years, I've learned to balance those. But notice if you get caught in one of those, because that could be, um, you know, not talking diagnostically, but just when you're having a hard time thinking about who you are with your kid, if there's a mismatch there, there's going to be conflict. And you may think that your child's behavior is so foreign to you. Like, I don't know. I'm so pragmatic. I get things done. I'm so outgoing. Like, it used to drive me crazy that Pascal had to he was so shy. He was so introverted. He was definitely melancholic, that earth, very introverted, very methodical. He took so long to warm up to people. By the time we left a birthday party, he was just warming up. I was like, bud, you got to jump in sooner. The party's only 2 hours long. And it was so wild to me. I never thought anything was wrong. Like diagnostically with that, I did with his model train behavior. I did suspect something was up with that, but it turns out not. It was just hyperfocus. Um, but it can seem like, oh, my kid is so foreign to me, something's wrong. And I've had clients say that, like, oh, she's just so shy. She takes so long to warm up. She's very introverted. And so I'm getting her evaluated. And I'm like, that's a temperament. It's not necessarily a diagnosis. But okay, so I went down this other rabbit hole and I was really curious about like temperament versus personality. And so what I learned, it's Thomas and Chess have done some work on this, like a framework for this, and they've identified 9 dimensions of temperament that these kind of give you patterns that kind of let you know, is your child easy? Are they difficult? Are they slow to warm up? Like those are kind of the main categories. But temperament is like an inborn thing, okay? It's biologically based tendencies and how a child reacts to the world. And it's usually present from infancy. You can usually see it in babies' wakes, sleep cycles, and their sensitivity, their activity, their mood, and their adaptability. It's sort of the raw material or the seed of who your child is. Now, the personality is much more complex, and this is formed by environment and how they interact with the environment and their experiences and their social learning. This has more to do with like the whole person, the what and the why of behavior. Personality includes like all your values, all your beliefs, and the system in which your child grows. Okay. Um, Two kids may naturally have a cautious temperament, but one can grow into a conscientious, careful adult, while the other may become an anxious perfectionist, right? A highly active toddler might become a relentless troublemaker in one environment, but a driven athlete in another. So, those are some ways to do it. You can't really change a child's temperament, but you can shape how they express it, guiding it towards strength and balance. Okay. So, but let's look at Thomas and Chess and those 9 areas, the 9 dimensions. So there's activity level, rhythmicity, rhythmicity. I never heard that word before. I had to look how to pronounce it. Approach / withdrawal, adaptability, intensity, mood, persistence, distractibility, and sensory threshold. The reason I bring these up again, okay? Persistence, distractibility, and sensory threshold can be temperament, and that can vary widely in a child without being a diagnostic criteria. Okay, now let's look at adaptability. Okay, so you can have somebody who's highly adaptable. They go with the flow. If this is a toddler, they may happily eat at a new restaurant. They don't mind who puts them to bed. They just go to bed, right? If they have low adaptability, they might melt down if their bedtime is shifted by 10 minutes, or if somebody else other than you tries to buckle them into their car seat, right? Sound familiar? So we have high adaptability, we have low. Activity level, I'm sure you guys are aware. We have high activity level. These guys are always moving, bouncing on the couch, fidgeting at the table, climbing everywhere. They need a lot of physical outlets. Low activity is content to sit quietly, look at books, builds with blocks for long stretches without any movement, right? That's just low activity. Intensity of reaction. High intensity. These kids are high octane. They shriek with joy when they're excited. They have full blown wails when they're upset. Everything comes out big. I would say this is almost all toddlers, but we also have low intensity. These kids smile softly, give a little whimper, reactions are more muted. Now, this gets complicated when you have 2 kids. You have one kid who's high intensity, all these like big feelings. Maybe they have big meltdowns, but they recover quickly. And then you have another child who is low intensity, just smiles softly, right? Whimpers, reactions are more muted. And now you think one is wrong and one is right. Everybody's different. When they say all kids are different, this is what it is. And you might have 2 who are wildly different. And then I see this all the time. Your first one is your first pancake, right? Well, and they also are your bar. So you have this one kid who has all these things, right? Maybe that's the kid that smiles softly, listen, reads a book. Then you get the second kid who's like, whoa, that kid is maybe highly adaptable, but that kid has high intensity, big feelings. That's your YOLO kid. And you think, oh my God, something's wrong with this kid. They're hyperactive. No, they just have different temperaments. Okay. Rhythmicity. Rhythmicity. Yeah, I'm saying it right. Oof. That's a tricky word. There's a lot of R's and M's in there. This is your biological regularity, right? Like rhythm, if you think of rhythms. So you can have a predictable rhythm, right? These kids eat, sleep, poop on a fairly set schedule. They thrive on routine. Then you have irregular kids who are hungry at odd times. They nap occasionally. It's unpredictable. They are hard to plan around. Approach / withdrawal. So these, you can have a kid who has a strong approach, right? They eagerly dive into new play groups. They say hi to strangers. They try unfamiliar foods. And then you have withdrawal kids. These kids hang back at the playground. They cling to a parent at birthday parties. They are reluctant to try new foods, right? So like I said, Pascal would have fallen into that category, although he was not reluctant to try new foods. And I think that parents, again, think that something's wrong or think that that's a diagnostic criteria. Sensory threshold. This is a big one. And I find that this varies widely. And a lot of parents, again, they rush to a diagnosis when this might just be temperament. So there's a low threshold, which means they have high sensitivity, right? Startles at small noises. They're bothered by clothing tags. They're picky about food textures. And then we have a high threshold, which can be low sensitivity. They don't notice they have dirty hands. They tolerate loud noise and rough play. They are unfazed by bright lights. And then we have persistence and distractibility. Persistent, these are the kids who will keep trying to finish a puzzle even if it's hard. They will insist on building the Lego structure exactly as pictured. And then we have distractibility, easily distracted, abandons a drawing when a sibling runs by. They forget a task if something more interesting pops up. And then we have general mood. There are positive people. These kids wake up smiling, they laugh easily. Generally, we'd say they have a sunny disposition. And then negative. These kids are more prone to irritability. They're frequently scowling or grumbling. They're hard to shift into cheerfulness. So none of these are good or bad. These are temperament traits. Now, I would say that we tend to start to think things are bad. If you have a kid who's prone to irritability, frequently scowls or grumbles, and is hard to shift into cheerfulness, this is one of the hugest mistakes I think we make with in the morning. Some kids are going to be grumpy in the morning, and we expect, because they have the best life ever, right? They probably slept in the best room. They have, parents who are there going to make them breakfast in the morning. You're like, off, man, give me some cheerfulness. And these kids aren't cheerful, and we start to think, okay, something's wrong with them. And it can just be temperament. Okay, again, I think this gets extremely difficult when we start thinking in terms of what's our temperament. And if we're a mismatch with our child's temperament, that I think is where things really go haywire. So let's look at a couple of those, because I think this is fascinating. And I think this, like I said at the beginning, I personally think this solves so many issues in our head that we think something's up with our kid, something's wrong with our kid, but also the idea that nobody's stuck in one. We're all a little bit of these things, and that the goal can be to balance them, not force a kid into another temperament or force ourselves into another temperament, but to recognize that each temperament is going to have some pros and cons. And we want to look at those, probably easier to do in ourselves first. Look at those and say, okay, well, if I am moody and grumpy and I want to be more cheerful, what are some steps I can take to do that? Not just sit in the like, well, this is how I am and that's how it's going to be, and I'm not changing, or I can't change. Because again, looking at this, I'm like, oh, holy shit, I did a really good job of balancing these, again, with a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes, and probably a lot of therapy. All right. So what if you have a high activity kid and you are a low activity parent? I see this all the time. This is rampant in the homeschool community. But again, I see this with the self-proclaimed introvert parents, and I don't mean self-proclaimed like I say that and it sounded shitty. It's not that I don't think you're not an introvert. I think we're all more introverted than most people think. I think people feel like they're lonely slash out of the norm for being introverted. And as I've discussed on this podcast, I don't think that's the case. I think most of us are more introverted than we think, but I do think it becomes a crutch. It becomes a crutch when you are unwilling to shift from that and to do the hard things, because it will create community, and or because you have this high activity child, right? And I think this is a very common mismatch. And so what happens is these kids are bouncing off the walls, they're climbing, they're running, and you just need quiet and calm. That's how you stay regulated. So this drains you, and the child feels like you're nagging them. Okay. So the tension here is that you may interpret the child as hyper or out of control. And the reframe is that you need to channel their energy into sports, playground time, or chores that involve movement. Okay. Parents, learn to build in quiet time after energy outlets. These kids, you have to help them release that energy, and then you can institute quiet times and quiet segments in the day. But your need for peace and calm cannot trump your child's need for energy, because you will constantly be in a mismatch. You will be up your child's ass. They will be acting out more. And so knowing that this mismatch exists and where the tension lies, you can absolutely just go for it. And if that means go into sports and maybe you walk around the field so you don't have to necessarily talk to parents if you don't want to, so be it. That's where maybe your introverted nature can take over so you get that break. On the flip side, learning to make small talk with the parents at the sports and the playground are what's going to give you that community and village, which will sustain you even in your most quiet moments. um, Sorry, guys. I'm sure you can hear the rooster. I don't get enough credit for trying to work around my rooster's crows, but they're very vocal right now, and we've got quite a few of them right now. So sorry if it's bugging you. All right. Number 2 mismatch: slow to adapt child with a flexible parent. And obviously, all of these go the other direction. So, what happens is parents happily go with the flow, new babysitter, new routine, and your child resists every change. The tension here is that you feel frustrated as a parent, right? Why can't you just go along? Why can't you just do what I'm doing? Like, this is not hard. And that can make your child feel unsafe and pressured. So the reframe for this is that parents, you want to slow down your transitions. You want to give warnings. Okay, we have 5 minutes till we leave, obviously. And you want to respect warm-up time. This was my particular struggle with Pascal. So he was a slow to adapt child. I am so freaking flexible, like metaphorically and literally. I am so flexible. Like, I just roll with the punches to the point of I think I might actually veer into like people pleasing land, but I'm just happy to go with the flow. I can think on my feet. I can turn on a dime. I can pivot. The famous Friends episode. I am super flexible. My child was not. Okay. He is now. He's very adaptable now, but he was not. And I knew that. And I just let him. I tell this story often when we go into a party. I told him he's not allowed to be rude. He has to say hello to people if they speak to him. I do not like when somebody says hello to a child and the child just looks away. I think that's rude. I think it's teaching kids to be rude. So I told him he had to say hi. He didn't have to touch anybody. He didn't have to hug anybody, and he could stay behind my leg the rest of the party. I was not care. I didn't care if he was shy. He was allowed to be shy at the party, but he couldn't be rude. And so other than that, though, I really learned, like, I had to take my time with transitions. If it was rushing in the morning, he would collapse. And so I learned to slow down. So maybe this is your mismatch: the slow to adapt, and the flexible child. All right, here we go. Number 3, the high intensity child with the low intensity parent. Oh my God. I just love, I'm so happy I went down this rabbit hole. Like, I'm hoping this is resonating with you guys as strongly as it is with me. Like, I just feel like these mismatches are all anybody really complains about with their kid, right? So high intensity child versus low intensity parent. Um, Child reacts big to everything, shrieks, yells, cheers, and the parent is naturally mellow. The tension here is that parents can feel overwhelmed or embarrassed in public, but the child feels dismissed. If you are like, it's not a big deal, doesn't match their experience because everything's a big deal. The reframe here is you can practice validating emotions without matching volume, right? Wow, that really upset you. Let's take a breath. So we talked about validating feelings in a prior episode. This can be the opposite too. So this would be something that's a mismatch with Pascal and I. He was a low intensity kid and I am a high intensity parent, and I learned to temper everything. I've talked about this before. Like, especially when it came to reprimanding him, because I'd be like, oh my God, why'd you do that? And I wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be like mad at him. It was just like a big reaction. And oh my God, this kid, if I crossed my eyes the wrong way at him, he would cry and say I was yelling at him. And I wouldn't even be like uttering a sound. And he would say I was yelling at him. And I learned that my expressions yell. Like, I'm big. I have big expressions. I have big hand motions, and that was affecting him. And he was a very low intensity kid. So I do think that I think it's a very spiritual gift. Our kids are a spiritual gift to us. And I believe that we almost always get a mismatch. And I think it's to help us balance our own temperaments, our own personalities. And I've always said that, like, kids are here to kind of they they make us confront a lot of things about ourselves, but this, to me, this wraps this up nicely in a box. I'm like, oh yeah, I am almost in all of these categories. I'm almost a mismatch with Pascal, but it has made me grow so much as a person. And I think him having me as a mismatch has made him grow and balance out all these temperament mismatches. So it's so fucking cool, man. I love being a human. I just love being human and learning about myself, or learning about my kid, learning about you guys. And what a time that I could go down. Like, we have so much information available to us that we all wasted on fucking Instagram is amazing. Like, this rabbit hole has been so fun, and doing some reading and learning all about this. All right, so another mismatch, number 4, is low persistence child and a highly persistent parent. Oh my God, again, a mismatch for me. So what happens is the parent may be very tenacious. We finish what we start. We're not quitters. And the child gets discouraged and wants to quit when it gets hard. So this tension, this can be battles over homework, chores, or practice sessions. The reframe for this is parents model perseverance, but breaks tasks into smaller steps so the child experiences success before frustration sets in. Oh my God, this is my whole fucking life with Pascal. I love it. All right, number 5, positive mood parent, more more negative mood child. Okay, so this mismatch happens when, like, you're say the parent who wakes up cheerful, optimistic, and your kid wakes up and they are irritable or grumpy and they're full of skepticism. Tension. Parents feel rejected because, like, you're like, hey, what's up? And your kid's like, I don't like you today, right? So you feel rejected, or you take it personally, or you're like, oh my God, why are you always crabby? And the reframe here, parents, you should respect your child's baseline and don't force cheer. Gentle acknowledgement, like, hey, I can see you're grumpy this morning, just helps your child regulate. Um, yes, this, oh, I don't mean to make this all about me, but damn, these are all about me. Um, so in this case too, one thing I did that was, one thing I learned to do with Pascal was, upon greeting him when he woke up, is I'd simply say, good morning. How did you sleep? Did you have any dreams? And I kept it really mellow, because even now, what happens by the time he always woke up early, but I would get up earlier, and I've already had a cup of coffee, and I wake up fucking ready to go. I wake up happy. I always make the most ambitious to-do list at 4:30 in the morning. Like, I'm crazy in the morning. I'm here for it. I am in full color, and it's not pleasant for people around me. And he would, even to this day, like, I have to forcibly, when he gets up, I've already hit the ground running, and I've had 80,000 ideas, and I know exactly what we're going to do. And I'll be like, and he'll be like, oh my God, Mom, I just got out of bed. Like, stop, slow down. And again, this can be the opposite. Maybe you wake up grumpy and your child wakes up cheerful, in which case, we should be better at regulating these things. And so you may have to give yourself a little, like, something to say in the morning so that you don't appear quite so grumpy. Number 6, highly sensitive child with a low sensitivity parent. So this is when your child notices, like, every sound, every seam, every taste, every sock seam, and you can't, like, what's the big deal? Because it doesn't affect you. And so the tension here is parents may dismiss or minimize, oh, you're fine. It's just a shirt tag. Don't worry about it, right? And the child feels unseen and invalidated. So in this reframe, you just learn to anticipate triggers, knowing that your child might need seamless socks, maybe the tags cut off of clothes, they might need more quiet spaces or more breaks throughout the day. And you also always want to be teaching coping skills. So that means, how do you handle, loud noises? Can you get headphones, or the little foam things that go into your ears? How do you ask for space when you need it? What's your scale? Maybe if you're starting to get overstimulated with loud noises and bright lights, maybe that's making a scale. Are you at a 5? Do we need to leave? Can we stay? Do you need to go somewhere? Like, these kinds of things just build in that low sensitivity or high sensitivity needs in your child, but teach them coping skills as well. What I'm finding a lot in my work is that we are absolutely recognizing these qualities. We don't recognize that they're a mismatch, and we are not teaching coping skills. It's not enough. I saw this so often in the homeschooling community, and it is probably one of the detriments that can happen with homeschooling. One of the cons is parents, they're low on the teaching skills part. Now, granted, if your kid has like some special needs and they're doing just a shit ton of masking in school, in the school system, it might be good to take them out. But I see kids with these temperaments, right? With maybe a high sensitivity or a withdrawal approach or a negative mood, and they just let the child. That's just who my kid is. Yes, it's an innate part of who your kid is, but the world demands that we teach coping skills, and not that just the world and society, but we want our kids to have a fulfilling life. We don't want kids to be mired in what I now see all over Instagram, and I'm sure all over TikTok, which I don't do, but I'm sure it's there, is like this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, and this makes me incapable in these circumstances. It's this victimhood. It's like getting stuck in these boxes of temperament and not balancing them, not having coping skills. So I do think, the highly sensitive, I think, is a really big one. And so you remember always teaching coping skills and what that might look like. And a lot of times it's building in that inherent scale, 1 to 10. Where are you? So your child can really start to recognize when something might be bothering them to the point of dysregulation. And they can let you know that and communicate that without having, a meltdown, which they will at 3, right? Number 7 is with the withdrawing child and the approaching parent, right? So we have that withdrawal or approaching, and it's just kind of approaching life or withdrawing. So the mismatch here is parents love meeting new people, starting new conversations, and the child hangs back and feels anxious in new settings. Very common mismatch. The tension here is that the parent will often push, like, oh, go play with that little girl, she really, go say hi to her, she wants to play with you. And then the child digs in deeper. So the reframe here is that if you can offer some gentle scaffolding, this is so important, to scaffold. Hey, let's go together and we can watch her play for a little while, and then maybe then we can play with her. So you want to go with the child, you want to scaffold that for them if this is your child, and that lets the child warm up gradually. So these are all cool. So temperament mismatches, they don't mean disaster, okay? They don't mean disaster, and they aren't diagnostic criteria. They do mean friction in your relationship, and a lot of parents assume that their way is the normal way, right? Like, all we know is our way. Of course, I think it's better to wake up cheerful than negative. I think that's better. But if I have a kid who wakes up consistently and needs a minute to wake up, I got to deal with that. You know what I mean? So, and guys, I have no superiority or anything in this area. I'm the worst. I did try to like force that on Pascal. I couldn't believe how different he was from me. And this explains it all. And I am glad that at some point, I think for me, I was like, this is the kid I have. It doesn't matter if I think it's right or wrong. And I knew he wasn't. I'm really glad that when he was little, I didn't have so much influx of social media. I just think we're out of control right now with everything spectrum behavior, everything. We're different. I think with the influx of social media and so many people on there just saying, this is my spectrum, this is my ADHD, this is my this is my that, it's giving us this idea that everything that's outside of what you think is quote unquote norm is a diagnosis, and it's doing our kids a disservice. Like, calling a kid who focuses on something for a couple of days ADHD is fucked up. Like, I wasn't like mad at my friend or anything, but I was like, that is so weird that you at 19 years old would think that I don't know if my kid has ADHD. Number one, I guess I was a little mad. I'm saying that pissy. But I was like, why are we lumping? I don't know. I just got this vision of like, are we expecting kids to be like we expect teeth right now? I don't know why teeth came, like everybody's got veneers and like these perfect teeth. Like Hollywood just, nobody has different teeth anymore. And so you see somebody with like a little snaggle tooth or a little weird tooth, and it looks so interesting. It's so fun. And I feel like that's in Jamie Land, that's a good analogy for these temperaments, right? Is like, are we expecting this homogenized version of kids where they all are cheerful and loving and do exactly what we like them to do at all times, or are we allowing for these various temperaments? So I feel like, again, this rabbit hole has tied up like the introvert village thing, the rushing to diagnoses, but also just some of our actual parenting struggles, right? I don't know. I'm beaming. If you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm just beaming. I feel so happy with this information because I'm like, oh, this is exactly what happened with me and Pascal. And again, the idea is not to get mired in this, but the idea is to balance it and learn coping skills and learn how to add the other side of the temperament so that you are easier. It's easier to navigate life when we're not stuck in boxes, when we're not committed to this is how I am and I can't change. I love, people notice this about me. I am able to navigate very easily. I can go to a polo match in Martha's Vineyard, and I can go to a dive bar and sing karaoke. I have learned to navigate a lot of different social situations, a lot of different climates. I've done hostage negotiation on the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, not it. It's called hostage negotiation, but it was really suicidal negotiation. On the Golden Gate Bridge, like I can navigate all different worlds that, and I think it's because of balancing these temperaments, of being able to match various energies that are coming at me and still maintain my core energy. And it's taken practice and like I said, a lot of money in therapy. But the biggest gift of all, of course, was Pascal, and learning to be with him and who he was. And I was just telling a friend today, like, I really think I was blessed having a boy, because I wonder if I had had a girl and felt like more of a connection, if I would have not allowed, I know I would have not allowed her to be her own person. I would have felt more compelled to make her like me, and that would have been disastrous. I would have destroyed. I think Pascal being a boy, there was this clear delineation for me where I was like, oh, man, it's a boy thing and I don't know it, So I was able to let him be those things. I always caution parents that I think it is when the child is the same gender as you. I think we run into more problems because we do have an expectation. Whereas when the child's the opposite gender of us, we're like, yeah, I don't know. We'll let that fly. Right. All right, guys. Enough yabbering. As always, I appreciate you guys. Do me a solid. And if you would leave a review, 5 stars are especially helpful. They help the algorithm and get more people to see this free podcast. And I appreciate you listening. I know you are a busy parent, and giving me your ears for any length of time is a super honor. So I really appreciate it. As always, rock on and have a beautiful day.